In this video, we will be discussing how to simplify ratios and other situations where you would use ratios. So the first thing we want to talk about is how do we know when to simplify numbers? And I put some rules here in your notes. You need to copy these in. So a number is divisible by 2 if it is even. So even numbers would be your 2, 4, 6, 8, 28 because it ends in 8, and like 34 because it ends in 4. That's how you know if a number is even. So that's when you can automatically divide by 2. Now the big brother of 2 is 4. A lot of numbers, if they're even, they can divide by 4, but in a lot of situations, just divide by 2, and you'll just divide by 2 twice. A number is divisible by 5 if it ends in 5 or 0. So that's your 5 family, your 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. A number can be simplified by 10 if it ends in 0. So that's 10, 20, 30, and those numbers. A number is divisible by 11 if it is a double, and we mean like 33, 44, 77, and so on. And then a number is divisible by 3. I always call 3 the evil 3 because they're hard to see. And if all else fails, try 3. But the actual rule is if the sum of the digits divides by 3, then you can divide the number by 3. So an example of this would be 27, we know is divisible by 3. If you take 7 and 2 and you add them together, you get 9. So 2 plus 7 equals 9, which does easily divide by 3. So 27 divides by 3. So let's do some practice with these. So 15, if I add 1 and 5 together, 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 can divide by 3. So it is divisible by 3, and because it ends in a 5, it is also divisible by 5. Now, I don't automatically always jump to the 3s. I would have seen that it ended in 5 and said, okay, it ends in 5, it's divisible by 5. 3 is always my last resort. 16, is it even? 16 is even. So I can automatically divide by 2. But you could also use the big brother of 2 because 16 divides also by 4. So you can also divide it by 4. Because it's even. All right, I want you to try 36 and 55 on your own. So pause the video, tell me what 36 and 55 are both divisible by, and then unpause it and you can check it. And here are your answers for those. So 36 is even, so you can automatically divide it by 2. Another one that I just saw is if you take 3 plus 6 and you add it together, you get 9. So this also can be divided by 3 because 3 can divide by 9. Or 3 can divide 9. And then 55 is a double, so it can divide by 11, but because it ends in 5, it can also be divided by 5. All right, if we look at the top of the next page, we're actually going to use those rules. So we're going to practice simplifying fractions. So it says review the fraction to determine if it can be simplified. Ask yourself, do the numerator and denominator have a number in common? So if we look at number 1, the first question I always want you to ask yourself is, are both numbers even? In this case, 4 and 6 are both even. So I can actually divide this by 2, numerator and denominator. 4 divided by 2 is 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. These are no longer even, they don't end in 5 or 0, and they cannot be divided by 3, so 2/3 is our final answer. If we look at number 2, are they even? Is your first question. Are they even? No. Do they end in 5 or 0? No. Do they end in 0? No. Are they a double? No. So I'm going to try 3. 8 plus 1 is 9. 2 plus 1 is 3. Both of those divide by 3, so I can divide this fraction by 3. 18 divided by 3 would give you 6. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Then ask yourself the questions again. Are they even? No. Do they end in 5 or 0? No. Do they end in 0? No. Are they doubles? No. Can they divide by 3? 6 can, but 7 cannot, so it is done. More than likely, if you can answer no to all of those, it's pretty much simplified. Why don't you try 3 and 4 on your own? When you're ready, unpause the video, and I will show you the answers for 3 and 4. So for number 3, they are both even, so I can divide by 2. In this case, you may have actually divided by 4, but I'm going to show you what happens if you divide by 2. So I'm left with 2 over 8. Now if I ask myself the questions again, are they even? They're even again, so I can divide by 2. So I'm left with 1/4. If you were to simplify this by 4, 4 divided by 4 would be 1, and 16 divided by 4 would be 4. So you still end with 1/4. And the number 4 should be an easy one. They're both doubles, so I can divide numerator and denominator by 11. 22 divided by 11 would be 2. 77 divided by 11 would be 7. So there's your answers for those ones. We're going to skip the practice at the bottom. You're going to do that on your own after the video. So let's jump over to page 10. On page 10, there's an example, and this is writing ratios. Mr. Bartell has 16 girls and 8 boys in his second block class. What is the ratio of boys to girls? Be sure to write all 3 ways to show the ratio. Now remember, there are 3 ways to write a ratio. You can write it as a fraction, you can write it with a colon, which is those 2 dots, and you can write it with the words, which is the word to. So it's asking for what is the ratio of boys to girls. And remember, order matters when you're doing these. So there are 8 boys and there are 16 girls. So our ratio we're setting up is boys over girls. And I always find it helpful to write it in words first. There are 8 boys and 16 girls. So if we set it up like that. And it doesn't ask for us to simplify it, but I think it would be best for us to simplify. If you know your facts, you can see that 8 does go into 16, so I could just divide this both by 8. But if you don't, you could divide by 2 until you get the whole way down. Now, anytime that you get a numerator of 1, it can't simplify any farther. It's done. So anytime you have a numerator of 1, you're done. So our fraction would be 1/2. Our colon would be 1:2, and the words would be 1, 2, 2. All right, so let's look at some examples. Solve the ratio word problems. Be sure to show the ratios in simplest form. So number 1 says, if I have 11 apples and 9 oranges in a fruit basket, what is the ratio of apples to oranges? So in this problem, I'm comparing apples to oranges. So I'm going to write A over P, or A over O. There are 11 apples to 9 oranges. And the easiest way I think to write a ratio is with a fraction. That way if you need to do any simplifying later on, you can. And does this simplify? It's not even. It doesn't end in 5 or 0. It doesn't end in 0. It's not doubles, and neither of those divide by 3. So there's your ratio, 11 over 9. Let's try number 2 together. There are 4 cubes and 10 pyramids in a box of blocks. What is the ratio of pyramids to cubes? So I need pyramids to cubes. So I'm going to write pyramids, and that's for P, over cubes, which is C. There are 10 pyramids over 4 cubes. Are they even? Yes. So I can just simplify by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 4 divided by 2 is 2. They're no longer even. They don't end in 5 or 0. Well, the numerator does, but the bottom has to at the same time. They don't end in 0. They're not doubles, and they don't divide by 3. So there's your ratio, 5 to 2. All right, the last one I want to talk about before I let you do 1 or 2 on your own is number 3. Now it says, at the circus there are 7 zebras and 14 monkeys. What is the ratio of zebras to all of the animals at the circus? So this is a part to whole relationship because it's asking for zebras to all of the animals. So part to whole. I want zebras over all. There are 7 zebras. Now the biggest mistake students make when they do this problem is they say, oh, well there's 14. But 14 actually represents the monkeys. I need to know all of the animals. So you have to add 7 plus 14. And you get 21 animals total. 7 over 21. Now, another trick you can use with simplifying is you can ask yourself, does the numerator go into the denominator? So is the numerator a factor? In this case, 7 is a factor of 21. So I'm going to divide these both by 7, and I'm left with 1/3 as my ratio. So what I would like for you to do is I want you to pause here. I want you to try number 4, 5, and 6 on your own. So pause the video, do 4, 5, and 6, and unpause and check your work. All right, and here are your answers to those. So in number 4, it was asking for all of the students in the classroom to girls, which is why I wrote all over G, all over girls. And you got 10 over 6, but they're both even, so I divided that by 2, and I got 5 over 3. For number 5, it's asking the number of Blu-ray sold to the number of DVD discs sold. So that is a ratio of 33 over 21. Those both are divisible by 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 can divide by 3, and 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 can divide by 3. So I get 11 over 7, and that's all it can simplify to. And then number 6, it wants to know the ratio of aces to the total. So there are 4 aces in the deck, and there's 52 total cards. Now, I simplified by 4, but you could have simplified by 2 and then 2 a second time. But you had to do 2 twice in order to get down to 1/3. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is equivalent ratios. And that's just multiplying or dividing the fraction by the same number in order to get a new ratio. So kind of like we were simplifying, we were dividing both the numerator and denominator by 2 to make a new fraction. It's doing exactly that. You're either dividing, which we were doing with simplifying, or multiplying so that it gets to a nicer denominator that we can work with. So let's use, and the important thing is you have to use the same number. So let's talk about a multiplication example. So say we were to multiply these both by 2. So we multiply the left side and the right side both by 2. An equivalent ratio would be 8 over 10, or 8 to 10 would be an equivalent ratio to 4 to 5 because we just multiplied the ratio by 2. Now if we divide, these both are divisible by 5 because they end in 5. So we're going to divide this first side by 5 and the second side by 5, just like we would simplify. Because if we were to write this like a fraction, it would be 15 over 5. And then we could divide by 5. So if I do that, I'm left with a ratio of 3 to 1, and that's an equivalent ratio to 15 to 5. So why don't you try this one? You can either multiply or divide by the same number. Why don't we say, let's multiply this one by 2 to make an equivalent ratio, and we'll divide this one by 2. So go ahead, you do those and tell me what my new ratios are. Unpause when you're ready to check. All right, so there's what your new ratios should look like after dividing and multiplying. All right, so let's talk about ratio tables. A ratio of the number of 6th graders who prefer bubblegum ice cream to chocolate chip ice cream is 6 to 4. Complete the ratio table below. If 36 6th graders prefer chocolate chip ice cream, how many prefer bubblegum ice cream? So if you look in the problem, it's talking about 6 to 4. Here's our 6 to 4 that we're starting out with. And we're going to follow the ratio table across to try to figure out what is the rule that we need to use in order to fill in all the blanks. So if we follow this across, what can we do to 6 to get to 12, and what can we do to 4 to get to 8? And remember, we have to do the same thing. Well, if you think about it, all I'm going to do is multiply by 2. 6 times 2 is 12, 4 times 2 is 8. Now, but here's where we run into a problem. 12 times 2 is in 18. So it's not going to be multiplying by 2. But if we look at this, we know multiplying by 2 gets us to 12. So what if I were to do something a little bit different? What if I were to add 6 here and 4 here? And I know we said we had to do the same thing, but in reality, this is kind of doing the same thing. We're just doubling the number. We're doubling the number on the top, and we're doubling the number on the bottom. And then if I add 6 here, and I add 4 here, 8 plus 4 would give me 12. And then if I follow the same rule again here, 18 plus 6 would give me 24. 12 plus 4 would give me 16. It's still working. And then I add 6 here and 4 here. That gets me, oh, I'm sorry, because it's continuing on. I read it wrong. So we have to get the whole way up to 36. So we have to kind of extend that sequence. So if you needed to, you could write, okay, well, I'm going to write out 16 plus 4 would give me 20, plus 4 would give me 24, and then continue it. But if you continue it out and you keep on going, you're going to get yourself to 54 here when you add 6 to 24, and then 6 more, and 6 more, and 6 more, and 6 more. So an easier way to do this would have been 6 over 4 equals blank over 36. What do you have to multiply times 4 to get to 36? Well, that would be times 9. And then 6 times 9 is 54. So we made ourselves an equivalent ratio, just like we were doing above, in order to fill in the blanks. All right, the last problem we're going to go over is Jack is helping a student council buy supplies for a school dance. A 30-ounce bag of crunchy chips costs $3. Jumbo chips cost $5 for 60 ounces. Would it be better if Jack bought crunchy chips or jumbo chips? So we're going to make ratios. And let's start with the crunchy chips. So it's 30 ounces for $3. And if I simplify that, I can divide it by 3, and I'm left with 10 over 1. So it's 10 ounces for $1. I'd say it's a pretty good price. And then if we do the same thing for jumbo, we'll say, okay, there's 60 ounces for $5. And if we simplify that, divide that by 5, and I'm left with 12 ounces for $1. So which bag of chips would be the better buy? Well, crunchy chips would be the better buy because it's only 10 ounces for $1 rather than 12 ounces for $1.